today we are talking about the Enneagram. What is the Enneagram? The Enneagram is the oldest personality system. What do I mean by the oldest? Well, it is 2,500 years old. It's a spiritual system. It's actually three-dimensional. So it was first a system of movement, and it was only in about 1915 that the philosopher Gurdjieff brought it to the modern world. And from then, of course, there's a whole lot of history that carried on with Chazo and Don Reeser and Russ Hudson that I studied with in America, two amazing guys who have written quite a few of the Enneagram books, and there have been many, many authors since then. So what do we use the Enneagram for? Well, it comes from that Greek word is ennea, 9, gram, drawing. It's a magnificent drawing, a circle with a triangle and then a hexag. So if you have a look at the Enneagram, it's intriguing to see that there are 9 points around the circle, and these 9 points are different characters, different personalities, different temperaments. And we start to use that symbol in terms of identifying which of these 9 personality types we were born. And yes, people go, oh my goodness, Joni, are we really born one of these 9 types? And you are born one of them. So let's just paint an example. You are a twin. So I'm going to paint a female twin. The egg is split. 2 little baby girls come out. And guess what? They have 2 different temperaments. And for those of you who know twins, maybe you are a twin. Maybe you gave birth to twins. You will know that those 2 little individuals are vastly, vastly different in character. So we are born this temperament. And then we spend the rest of our life, being nurtured in different ways and different experiences, different opportunities. And of course, life unfolds. So the Enneagram gives the opportunity to look at the 9 types and look at the levels of psychological health. So that's what makes it a 3-dimensional system. But this is a short webinar. Tomorrow we have a masterclass on the Enneagram on the HybriCON. So tomorrow we will go into depth on that. But for today, let's just have a scoot around what do these 9 types mean and how can you use it to play to your personality strengths. Well, the first thing is to identify which of these 9 types you were born. And there are different ways of doing that. There are different assessments online. There's some really good ones that I've seen over the last 27 years that I've been doing the Enneagram. And then there's some kind of, freebies that are not so good. So I'm going to say to you to please email me, Joni at Resilient People, and tell me what you're going to use the Enneagram for, and I will steer you in the right direction in terms of what assessment you may want to take. Some of the international Enneagram authors and Enneagram schools, because there are many schools internationally, are not actually using assessments, and I think that's fine too. I think it's beautiful when you start to really become more aware of your behavior patterns, more aware of the fears that are driving you, more aware of how you are intrinsically motivating yourself. So the descriptors of each of these 9 types are really quite detailed. And if you start to read the descriptors, you start to speak to people of a similar type, it is actually quite easy to find out which of these 9 types you were born without doing an assessment. So you can go the narrative route or you can go the assessment route. But even if you take an assessment, that is the start of a journey of self-awareness. The Enneagram is sometimes called a tool of self-compassion. So much of our brain is all about the, what's going to go wrong and what am I fearing and what should I look out for? And it's particularly difficult to actually simmer down and, tune down our brains. It can take over, and hence we're not sleeping so well, and hence we're not believing in ourselves. So the Enneagram is a tool of self-compassion. When I first learned the Enneagram, it was about 27 years ago, and I actually learned it in London on a course delivered by Don Reeser and Russ Hudson. And I'll never forget this. My late husband, Gareth, sent my mum and I to London, and he said, you'd love the 7-day course. And my mum and I looked at each other and we said, okay, London, fun, friends, see a few shows. We'll go to London and have fun, and we'll kind of see what the 7-day course is all about. We had no clue what the course was all about. So we went off to London, and we started on the type 8 in the Enneagram, which is the challenger. And it sounded pretty intriguing, and I could think to myself, my sister's a challenger, and I've got a few friends who are challengers, and they are direct and they're honest and they call a spade a shovel. And it was like, oh yeah, I get it. Now I know how they operate and how their brains are hardwired. Then the next type they went on to was the type 9, the peacemaker. And I thought, yeah, I'm thinking back to my father. He was a peacemaker, and had these kind of lovely little funny, quirky sayings that would make us all laugh, but he'd never take a stance. He'd really always sit on the fence. So when my sister as a type 8 and myself as a type 3, when we fought, he'd never take which person as a patriarch he should discipline, etc. He would just say, I see your point, Joni, and I see your sister's point. So the type 9, the peacemaker, keeping the peace in the home, and a whole lot of fun to be parented by a type 9. And then I could see the type 1, the perfectionist and the detail orientation and the polarity, thinking this is right, this is wrong. And I had a few friends who are type 1s. And then we got to the type 2, the helper, and I definitely have a lot of friends who are type 2s, and we should all have friends who are type 2s. And then I got to the type 3. And bear in mind, this was a 7-day course in the UK, and almost 3/4 of a day per type. So a lot of depth as to the healthy levels of each type, the average levels psychologically, and the unhealthy levels. So we got to the type 3, and we started going down the levels of health. And I'm going to be very vulnerable here and very honest, as I looked at my mum and I said, I'm out of here. And I left the training room. I went down the road to the closest coffee shop, and I burst into tears. And then I not only cried, I did the ugly cry, that sob, and then the uncontrollable sob. And my mother was too engrossed in the program to leave, and then she came and found me at the end of the day, and she said, Joni, what is the problem? And I just said, Mom, I have really seen as a type 3 how terribly unhealthy I've been. How I've just put my career ahead of children, ahead of everything else. I've been wanting to achieve, and it's about strive, drive, and achieve, and goals, and not a lot of self-care, because it's always about the next achievement, the next goal, the next boundary that we want to push. So it was a rude awakening. It was not an easy look in the mirror. And I thought to myself, do I actually want to carry on with this course? Do I want to go and learn tomorrow about the type 4, the individualist? Do I want to carry on to the type 7? And of course I did. I was intrigued, and I did a bit of self-talk, and just fortuitously I had my mum with me, and she was really kind in terms of saying, look, yes, Joni, you do trip yourself up a lot here, but these are the benefits I see of you being born a type 3, and this is where you've really managed to jump those hurdles and, be quite gritty and gutsy in your upbringing. So it was really, really fortuitous that I had my mum there. And when I reflect back now, I think, oh, cringe. My late husband saw how incredibly unhealthy I was as a 3, so he sent me to London, and he had the foresight to send me with my mum, who is a type 6, who I'm going to explain in brief shortly. So let's go on to the type 4, which is the individualist. And Don Riso, one of the fathers of the Enneagram. So if you want to read possibly, I think, the best written book on the Enneagram, it would be called, it is called The Wisdom of the Enneagram. It's quite a big book, it's quite thick, and Don Riso and Russ Hudson wrote that. And it really gives you the depth of the Enneagram. So he was a type 4, he passed on in 2012. And he was a type 4 with a 3 wing, which I'll explain in a few minutes. So that would be a good book to read, like really emotionally, very in tune with who they are, the individualist. Very different in the way they dress, the way they think. Linguistically, very, very powerful, the type 4. So that was Don Riso, the type 4. He started collaborating with Russ Hudson, who was born a type 5, the investigator. And actually that was the type of my late husband, the investigator. So also quite a quiet, withdrawn type with this amazing set of neurons, amazing brain, with this hard wiring to investigate for knowledge and acquiring knowledge and seeing how the world ticks and really going down rabbit holes to find out information. So it was a beautiful collaboration, the type 4, the individualist, Don Riso, and the type 5, the investigator. And then I'm coming to the end now of describing these types because I've only got 2 left and then we've done the full circle. So I'll describe the type 6. The type 6 is called the loyalist, and they are quite difficult to describe because they can be quite counterphobic, like what's going on, you know, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, like things are going to go wrong, and they can be they can be phobic and they can be counterphobic, like jeepers creepers, let's get this done, and quite determined and, you know, vociferous about their needs and what needs to be done. So they're a beautiful kind of bundle of opposites. The type 6, the loyalist, are loyal to their friends, to their family, to the businesses they work in. So this loyalty is magnificent. And I was fortunate, as I said earlier, of having a mum as a type 6. So this real loyalty to parenting and to being very nurturing as a mum. And a beautiful personality type. And I must say I was very, very grateful that she was with me in London on that first 7-day Enneagram course. So that's the type 6. And now the type 7, and then we've done this full circle, we've come around. The type 7 is called the enthusiast. And they really are gung-ho for what the opportunities are, where can we go, variety, spontaneity, fun, really squeezing the juice out of every day. And we often tell people the reason we end an Enneagram course, whether it be an hour, 2 hours, a day, or 7 days with the 7, the type 7, the enthusiast, is because you always end on a beautiful high note. And of course, the 7 as the enthusiast could also have some very low moments. On the masterclass tomorrow, I'll be speaking about different world-known personalities so that you can start to identify these 7. And there's a big Enneagram community, and we're on phones, we're on calls together, we're in workshops, and in the good old days of a lot more traveling, we were in these huge Enneagram Association meetings, really discussing well-known personalities and what types we think they were. And the type 7, I like to say, you know, with this high energy, frequency, and a zest for life, can also go into the doldrums of depression, as all of us can. So Robin Williams, we believe, was also a type 7. They're a brilliant comedian. Many of us have watched all of those movies and just lapped it up, and how devastatingly sad when he committed suicide. So let's go back to why the Enneagram and the benefits of the Enneagram. So when I'm looking at the Enneagram in a team situation, the huge benefits of a team, and bear in mind this could be a corporate team, it could be an NGO, or it could be a system that you're working in. But a team is really a beautiful way of looking at the Enneagram and looking at the individuality of the team members. And the benefit is really looking at the diversity of thinking. So when team members understand each other, there will be less judgment. There will be more curiosity. There will be a far better way of dealing with conflict, or courageous conversations, or putting divergent views on the table. So it's a beautiful dance that team members start to play when they understand how they as individuals are hardwired, and then how their teammates are hardwired vastly differently. So that growth mindset to say, hey, you know, if it was up to me and this team, we would press go on this project and we would launch in 3 weeks' time and we would start making money. And then another team member saying, I don't know about that. You know, if we think about the aesthetics of how this particular project assessment looks, and we think about that specific wording and the coloring and the brochures, it's not up to speed. We cannot launch in 3 weeks' time. So can you see, you know, the more assertive, lean in, let's go forward kind of personalities, and maybe the lean back personalities that are looking at the aesthetics and the complete picture. So it's this wonderful dance between different personality styles in a team. And there's a beautiful slide that we have, which just has a look at what is the mental orientation in a team. And I'll take you through that now, because it's just a lovely way of coming to grips with, hey, brains are hardwired differently. They are hardwired differently from birth. And different team members will have these different orientations. So let's start off with the slide we're looking at now, which gives you 4 words underneath each of the personality types. So I'm going to, have a bit of fun here with you on this webinar, and I'm not going to only talk about the strengths. I'm also going to talk about some of the downsides. So let's start off with the type 8, as I did earlier, because we're in the habit of doing that worldwide. Remember, we call the type 8 the challenger. And actually, as I say that, I like to just remind myself that in many parts of the world, we don't actually use a label to the number, because sometimes those labels are, have different connotations in different countries, and we only use the number. But here we're talking, to Americans and to South Africans, and I think the word challenger is probably similar in many of the countries that are listening. So the challenger, that type of team member, is going to be direct to the point and really be looking at how many opportunities we have in this business or this team. Where we're going, they're the kind of people that are standing on the globe and they are seeing the future. So where can we go? What can we do strategically? How can we outwit the competitors? And they do this. You'll see the first 2 words are self-confidently and decisively. So that is a huge asset of having those personalities on your team, because they're playing to those strengths. But as I said, we've all got this downside. So the downside of the type 8 is they can be really my way or the friggin' highway. So that willfulness, that confrontational nature, that I've got to get this done and it's got to be done according to my standards, my timelines and my needs. So, even within a day, all of us, no matter what personality type you were born, can oscillate between these higher, beautiful strengths and issues that can trip us up. But have a look for strengths. I like to look at strengths in a team and how do we pull that out of each other. So when I'm dealing with type 8s, I will say to them, hey, if you're thinking about this particular industry, let's call it the automotive industry, and electric vehicles in 10 years' time, what do you think are the unintended consequences if we are the BMW manufacturing group? What else should we be looking at? And how can we build community in a country like South Africa, which could be different to Germany? So I'll be asking those type 8s for their vision, for their strategic thinking, and pulling that out of them. Because I find that I'm not as good as type 8s. My hardwiring is vastly different. So their strategic thinking is a huge asset. Now let's look briefly at the type 9. The type 9 really are incredibly reassuring and incredibly receptive. So what I ask type 9s, and I ask them early in a meeting, what are the different facets we need to look at here? Can you see it from different perspectives? The type 9, if you look at the beautiful symbol of the Enneagram, is right at the top of the Enneagram. And they are able to see elements and how systems work together and how you lever different parts of a system with the different elements. So they're able to give you that perspective of, I can see it from this point of view, Joni, and I can see it from that point of view. Perhaps we shouldn't launch that project in 3 weeks' time. Perhaps we can delay it and launch it slightly later and take X, Y, Z into account. So that groundedness, that calmness. And there's been a lot of neuroscience research on calm brains and the ability to think really clearly. So I will often sit in a meeting with a type 9 and that creativity will come through where I think, gee, that calm brain saw something that we should include that I had never thought about. So it's quite magnificent. However, when type 9s are battling, they're stressed, they will start to be quite complacent. In fact, I coached a type 9 today who said, yes, Joni, I kind of sit back and I wait for the conversation to unfold. and I'm complacent and I just sit and I nod heads like this and I agree, and and I should be stepping up to the plate, and I should be, putting my 10 cents worth into the conversation far, far earlier. So, that's the high side and the low side. I'm having such fun, and I believe we only have 5 minutes left in this webinar. So we are going to go safety belts on quite fast now. The type 1, you want to speak to them about detail. That's the strength that they bring to the team. What's the detail? Have we got the contracts in place? Have we got the risk factors looked at, etc., etc.? Beautiful detail, and make sure they're not slipping down into that perfectionism where everything has got to be detailed to the nth degree, because often that leads to no projects being launched. The type 2s, how do you bring out the strengths of the type 2 in a team? The type 2 are so attuned to other people's needs. They're so observant of, who's the in-group, who's the out-group, who can be included, who needs a bit of tender loving care, and they lean into people's needs. It is magnificent. So the type 2, you should be saying, look, have we been inclusive enough? Could we be doing something else? What should we be doing differently in this team? And the people needs are really beautifully, beautifully maintained, and people will thrive working with type 2s. Until they get a bit possessive and manipulative, those 2 words, I think, speak for themselves. Type 3, which is my type that I've spoken about, we're really wanting to know how to excel. What are the key measures of success? How do we plan that out in terms of the next few months? And make sure that type 3s have got those goals in place for the team and how to excel. But also make sure that type 3s are not burning out. Make sure that they're not overdriven and they're not over-image conscious. And that's not necessarily about clothes, but about how does the next team view us, or how does the competitor view us. And that all of that external looking at what's happening in the environment can obviously take your eye off the ball. The type 4s, bring out their strengths in your team meetings. Use their aesthetic attunement, their beautiful creativity, their ability. I often look at type 4s and they, will bring such amazing, not necessarily intuitiveness, but the ability to look at the creativity and to express the value proposition of your business or your projects, or even your business as usual. So bring out that creativity, and they too can be quite withdrawn. So maybe you've got to ask them to step up to the plate in those meetings. They can be quite self-aware to the point of not wanting to mention anything unless it's beautifully packaged, and that could lead to moodiness and depression. So watch that with your type 4s. Excuse me. On to the type 5s. Bring out their strengths in a team meeting. They too can be quite quiet and withdrawn. They are the investigator. The type 5s in meetings, you just give them a little gem of an idea. They will research it from Cape to Cairo. They'll find out really what is needed in terms of knowledge acquisition. And they normally are just the brain boxes of acquiring all of that knowledge. So I will often email my type 5s before a team meeting and say, hey, could you come to us with what is happening in Outer Mongolia, because we need to see if we can launch this throughout Africa or wherever else we're going for a global footprint. The type 6s, their unbelievable talent in team meetings is that intuitive nature that they have. So pull out their strengths. They don't always know that they're intuitive. They don't always know that they can see, underneath that shiny box and that shiny paper, what's inside. It may not be appealing what's inside a big shiny box. So they're intuitive. They can smell things coming around the corner, which is magnificent. They also are incredibly responsible. So if you have things that have to be done timeously, they're committed, they'll get that stuff done. And now to end on the type 7, how do you pull out their strengths, and how do they play to their strengths in team meetings? Well, that enthusiasm, that lightness, that spontaneity, that making fun out of nothing is just fantastic, and it can be really liberating in the times in which we live. When you think of 81% of employees are suffering 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 levels of burnout, it's a huge stat McKinsey has just launched. You want type 7s in your team, because even if things are going trashy and downhill, your type 7 is going to say, hey, let's look at the light side here. This can be done, even though that can't be done. Crack a joke, just bring out the energy and the vitality, and also that beautiful spontaneity. So those are the strengths of the type 7. What must you be careful of with them is their scatteredness. So they might start this project, be completely gung-ho about it, and then leave the details to someone else. So can you see here, what we've done is we've said each of the 9 types has their strengths. And if you start to be more self-aware, so as Aristotle said, in fact, I would like this on my gravestone, knowing thyself is the beginning of wisdom. So if you start to know your strengths and pull out your strengths, you will lead a far more authentic life, know what's good for you, know what to say no to, know how to step up, put up your boundaries, and really start to enjoy kind of this time on the planet and what you are contributing. So it gives you that little vummer with your sense of purpose and your ability to be healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically. So don't forget to email me, Joni, Joni, at resilientpeople.co.za. Let me know if you want the Enneagram for a family session, for a team session, perhaps an NGO. And then, as I promised earlier, I could also steer you in the right direction to which Enneagram assessment to take if you're curious and you want to see which of the types you were born, or you simply want to start playing with the system. You cannot break it. There are 9 types, and you have all 9 types within you. We are not boxing you. We are just saying, how do you play to your own inborn personality strengths?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday's episode of High Noon Live. I'm Nikki Bush, human potential expert and business speaker, best-selling author, and I am bringing you to